Hey, what's up, guys? It's Cashflow with Disrupt Gaming. I am creating this video as a kind of running dialogue with myself about the state of Rainbow Six Siege. We see it all the time, mostly on Twitter. It's a dead game. It's a dying game. If they don't do this by X date, then the game will die. I disagree with that, and I'll talk about this more, but I heavily disagree with the word usage. Look, the words that you use to describe things are important. In this example, saying something is dying or is in trouble or whatever is so vague that it's impossible to have a meaningful conversation because you'll basically always be right? Like I can literally look at you as a person and say you're dying, because that's true. You will literally die. So I will be right at some point. Siege most likely will not exist at some point, right? So saying, oh, it's dying, whatever, like that's not accurate. It's not specific. It's just nonsense is what it really is. But to kind of dig into that a little bit, I think when you really put anyone who says the game is dying to the test and say, okay, don't use that word. Give me a date when the game goes to 0, as in no more players. Most people aren't going to give you a date anytime soon. I highly doubt anyone thinks that Siege is going to be at 0 players in 6 months. I highly doubt anyone thinks Siege will be at half the player base in 6 months. So describing what you actually mean when you're making predictions or talking about the state of the game is really, really, really important. So I want to stop here for a second and say that my career is, Siege is a huge part of my career. If I thought Siege was dying, let me tell you, I would not be doing what I'm doing right now. I just wouldn't. I've got so many opportunities to take capital and deploy it into something meaningful that if I thought Siege was dying, I wouldn't be putting my money where my mouth is. So, I'm incented as much as anybody to be accurate in the way I think about the future of Rainbow Six. With that being said, something I've noticed is that a lot of the people that are saying the game is dead or dying or whatever, most of them have a little bit of an axe to grind. It's generally two categories. One is content creators who are probably their views are down, and so they're angry and frustrated that they're not getting the views they used to. The other category is kind of ex-pro players. They've had a bad experience in the pro ecosystem, and so they say bad things about Siege now. And then, of course, there's the like really tight-knit, really into Siege community that exists a lot on Twitter and on Reddit that more or less just kind of echoes those same sentiments, like the really, really hardcore fans of the game. So to get into like where I think Siege is going and what's going to happen, let's just kind of talk about some facts. And when I say facts, I'm just riffing here. Certainly open to people double checking all this, but if I get a date wrong or slightly wrong on percentages, right, I'm just kind of shooting off the top of my head here. But so Siege came out in 2015. It's a single title. It's obviously been updated a lot, but that model in and of itself is somewhat unique, right? League of Legends and Counter-Strike are kind of these anomalies. A lot of games release a new title constantly, right? Like Call of Duty comes out with a new game every single freaking year. So that kind of model of one game is something special. And like Counter-Strike and League of Legends are really the only ones to do it for a really, really long time and never have like a massive drop in player count. So the task that Siege is kind of up against here is one that's pretty significant. There's new competition coming out all the time. There's all sorts of things that can happen. So here's where I'm going with this. If you mean that Siege is dying, and what you really mean is that it's just getting less popular, I can probably get on board with that. I mean, I think there's stats that will show that if you go look at search volume on Google and YouTube, there are less searches for Rainbow Six material than there were at previous points in time, right? That's a fact. Okay, great. There are less players than there were at the peak. I think the all-time peak for Siege was like 120,000 or something like that on Steam, and that's just Steam. That doesn't include everything. But I think we're around 70 or 80. So are we at the all-time peak of Siege? No. Do I think that Siege could decline from here in players? Yeah, I do think that could happen. I'm not an idiot. I don't think the game's perfect. I don't think there's all these real issues that are occurring, cheaters, all the bugs, all the stuff. These are all real things that Ubisoft does need to correct. And boy, guys, trust me when I say they're trying. Ubisoft loves Siege. Go look at their investor relations report, and you'll see how important Siege is to the company as a whole. They are highly invested. They do not want Siege to have a dramatic drop-off in popularity. So kind of riffing on what I was talking about earlier, there's lots of new competition. Valorant just came out. Apex Legends is now having a multiplayer thing. There's always going to be these things kind of coming out. And look, it's an FPS. If you've been playing Siege for 6 years, there's a good chance you're maybe ready for something new. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally okay. There's no, FPS that's just going to win, and then everyone plays only that game for forever. There's going to be ebbs and flows to things. So, I just think that all of the poo-pooing that goes on about it, it's mostly people that work in Siege somehow. Like I said, players or content creators. They're probably not happy with their views, and look, that's tough, right? Like, we get it. We need views too. I understand. But ultimately that doesn't change my outlook that the game is not dying. If you say it's dying, you're either just being dramatic or inauthentic with your word choice, or just literally using hyperbole, right? Which, if you don't know what hyperbole it is, it's basically just like a gross exaggeration, like using really dramatic words to describe certain things. So, I think something that I'd like to see is more ownership of what people say. Look, if you're going to say that Siege is dying, fine, but back it up with some specificity. Tell me, hey, I think the game is going to be at this player count by this date, average player count. And then let's see if you're right or wrong, right? I mean, golly, for 2 years, I've kind of held this position, and there are so many tweets I could go back and pull back and be like, still. So yeah, just kind of wrapping all of this up. Is Siege dying? No. Is Siege going to be around for a long, long time? Yes. Is there a risk that another game that offers the same elements that Siege does, so real kind of like not real, but like Earth-based armor and weapons and operators in a realistic environment with vertical destruction and vertical play and destructible environments, and could totally wipe Siege out? Yeah, that could happen. That could definitely happen. Do I think that other FPS games that are coming out, so Apex with its multiplayer deal, Valorant, maybe whatever the game that Amazon's working out can pull players away? Yeah, I think that can happen too. And look, if the game, if the data that supports how Ubi makes their decisions says that there's a critical issue, they're going to try to resolve it. Like I said, it's very, 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 very important to Ubisoft. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like I said, I'm just riffing here. I'm shooting from the hip, kind of talking about it, but those are generally my thoughts. Let me know Let me know if you agree or disagree. Maybe put your specific projections down here in the tweet, and I'll bookmark it. We'll see if you're right. Anyway, hope everyone's had a great day and have an awesome weekend. Peace.